some of y'all about to be triggered.
Now, I've seen comments from some of you guys on my videos lately, and you've said things like, you keep talking about niche fragrances and artistic fragrances, but honestly, I'm not interested in being an aficionado. I just want to smell good. Can you tell me what smells good? And to that I say, great. Nothing wrong with that. I do talk about stuff that smells really good. In fact, everything I talk about smells good to me. Obviously, that's going to be a subjective conversation for you. But I know what they mean. They're looking for easy to please. We'll get into it. But if this is your position, if you have no intention of diving deeper into the art, if you just want to smell good, then this video has been created to save you time, money, and headache. Let me explain. First of all, we need to define what fragrances that smell good are and what they do. These were fragrances that were created to be mainstream, which means that they were made to be accessible to the average person, therefore making them accessible to as many people as possible. They tend to be appealing in very topical ways, and this is not a bad thing, so don't get me wrong, but often they are an amalgamation of some of the most pleasing elements that you can put in a fragrance, which has been documented throughout time of what fragrances do well and why they do well. We can see that these simple fragrances tend to do very well with people because they're easy to understand. They often feature a balance of some very appealing elements. Like I said, they're fresh, they can be spicy, maybe a little bit sweet in either a fruity or maybe a vanilla-like way. They'll feature citruses, maybe woods and musk in the base. Very, very rudimentary elements. Again, nothing wrong with that, but this is just what it is. And this all makes essentially a winning formula for a mass appealing scent. And it can feature marginal variation in order to draw faint lines between different fragrances. But all in all, many of these fragrances will smell similar to each other. Now, that doesn't mean they're gonna smell the same, but let's be honest, they're also not all that different either. Here's some examples. Prada Luna Rossa Carbon, a great scent from Prada. Definitely inspired by Dior Sauvage. Kind of smells like a high quality shower gel. Really fresh, spicy, smooth, soapy in a way. Very nice, easy to wear. Here's something I might wear more in the fall or spring. This is from Gucci. This is Guilty Eau de Parfum. Sweet and fresh. If you smell the original, then this is not very different. Just a little bit stronger perhaps. With some very subtle differences, but not really. The bottle's cool though, so I can see why it would sell with that. But very basic elements coming together in an effective way. This one I believe is discontinued from Yves Saint Laurent. La Nuit de l'Homme au Électrique. Smells reminiscent of something like Versace Eros. I actually prefer this to Eros a bit because it's not quite as bombastic and flamboyant. It is very sweet with this almost apple-like sweetness. There's a warm, spicy quality. There is a freshness to it. There's a vanilla-like sweetness as well. And it's just kind of sexy, very juvenile, very boyish in a way, but super easy to wear.
Highly complimentable.
If that's what you're after, it's here. This one's not bad. Coach for Men Platinum. It is a slightly different take on an easy to wear fragrance. It does have pineapple, which you don't see a ton of in men's designer fragrances, but ultimately it smells like Dior Sauvage, kind of a fresh, black, peppery, spicy fragrance, very, very fresh and clean, but with a kind of a sweet vanilla and pineapple, giving it a little bit of dimension, but all in all, not all that different from what's out there. And we're not just talking about in the designer realm. This is from a niche house, but because of its profile, I would consider it a mainstream fragrance. We have Percival from Parfums de Marly. Great scent. I enjoy wearing it for its scent. I enjoy wearing it because it lasts a long time if I need that, but you don't need this. You can get Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce, you can get Mont Blanc Legend. This is actually copying that DNA, specifically the Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce, which kind of started it all, and the others came after. Again, super easy to wear, very, very likable, has gotten me compliments, and again, I do enjoy it. Actually, I don't even own most of the fragrances you would consider in this category, like Bleu de Chanel, Dior Sauvage, Versace Dylan Blue, and the list goes on and on. I don't own any of those simply because I'm trying to avoid redundancy in my collection in that regard. But I used to own many of them. In fact, all the ones I just said I used to own at one point. So this brings me to the most important part, function. We talked about what this type of fragrance is. Now let's talk about what it does. Again, these fragrances are made to be simple, easy to understand, easy to wear, and thus will help you achieve what you might be looking for, smelling good. As per the title, The critical question to ask is, how many of these types of fragrances do you actually need? Is your entire collection comprised of fragrances like this? They all serve the same purpose. And as we mentioned, while they might have some defining differences, they're ultimately not that different across the board. I'm not necessarily asking you this question. You don't have to answer it to me. I'm asking you to ask yourself. Be real with yourself. Go on, take a moment. Now that you've taken a moment to think about it, look at your collection of smell goods and notice the ones you reach for the most. I would imagine there's probably between 2 and 4 or 5 of them that you wear the most out of all of them. Now, if you happen to have 4 or 5 fragrances or less, then don't worry about it. Now look at the rest of the fragrances, the ones that you don't reach for as much. While you may like them, do you really need them? Even though they serve the same purpose as the ones you do wear in your collection, if you're not wearing them, that is a sign that they are redundant in your collection. So what you do from this point is completely your choice. You can choose to change nothing and go on as you normally go on, and neither of us will lose any sleep. But if you feel even slightly convicted by this, maybe a change will do you some good. Gifting or selling those bottles that you're not wearing might bring you some peace. It did for me. Now you might ask, but what if I miss one? What if I miss it after I let it go? Well, that's easy. If you miss it, just get it back. These fragrances are typically widely available anyway, so it's not hard to reacquire. But if you don't miss it, and chances are you won't, you didn't actually need it in the first place. But sometimes we need to get something to realize we don't need it. Speaking all of this from experience. All this to say, even if you only want to buy fragrances and wear them to smell good to others, how you actually feel about the fragrance matters the most. And obviously it plays a big role in how often you choose to wear it. Again, the fragrances that you aren't reaching for are the ones that maybe you don't actually love. And if that's the case, what's the point of having them if you're only going to spray them once or twice a year? Fragrances are made to be worn. As I always say, only add full bottles of fragrances that you've tried and love. If you want to avoid getting overwhelmed by excess and getting jaded by your collection because everything is starting to blur together and feel the same and you only reach for the same few. Again, I've been there. I made a whole video about that. Be very scrupulous with your acquisition process of getting a new fragrance. If you want to know more about that, I actually just talked about that in a previous video. I'm going to link it up here, talking about spending habits and my tips for acquiring new fragrances into your collection. That's it. I want to know what you think. Down in the comments, what are your thoughts on redundancy of fragrances that simply smell good? Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with only wanting to smell good, but I just want you to be diligent about building a collection that is based only on that. Let me know what you think down below, and thank you so much for tuning in. Peace. I'll see you in the next one.